They disappeared at the first sign of failure. His money? It vanished with bad decisions and empty promises. His dreams? They shattered like glass under the weight of doubt. He felt loneliness like few people ever do. He hit rock bottom, that dark place where hope goes to die. And it was there, in the silence, with no applause. Grayson Lee lost everything before he even turned 30. Grayson Lee lost everything before he even turned 30. His friends. They disappeared at the first sign of failure. His money? It vanished with bad decisions and empty promises. His dreams? They shattered like glass under the weight of doubt. He felt loneliness like few people ever do. He hit rock bottom, that dark place where hope goes to die. And it was there, in the silence, with no applause and no audience, that he discovered a truth that changed his life forever. The strength he was searching for wasn't found in comforting words. It wasn't in other people's understanding. It was inside him. It was in the moment of greatest weakness that he found his true spiritual strength. Grayson realized it was no longer about telling people his problems. It was about overcoming challenges in silence. It was about reaching deep inside to find the faith that moves mountains. He traded self-pity for resilience. He swapped complaints for disciplined action. And in less than 2 years, the world witnessed a new Grayson Lee, a man who conquered not just his circumstances, but his own fear. This is a story about faith over fear, about spiritual growth, about the invisible power that few dare to cultivate, strength through faith and silent action. If you feel like you've hit rock bottom, know this: you might be exactly where your true transformation is about to begin. Grayson Lee thought he knew what it meant to fall. That was until the day he lost everything. It wasn't some big tragedy. There wasn't a massive event. It was more like a silent collapse. Small failures, delayed decisions, ignored dreams. When he finally stopped to look at his life, all he could see was rubble. His bank account, empty. His apartment, bare. His calendar, dead silent. The text that once flooded his phone, gone. Where were all those friends who had sworn they'd always have his back? Where were the opportunities that once seemed like a sure thing? Sitting alone in a dark room, Grayson faced the one truth he could no longer escape. He had lost himself. Not because of bad luck, not because of what others did, but because deep down he had given up on himself long before the world gave up on him. For months, Grayson drowned in excuses. The poison of self-pity coursed through his veins. Each day was a carbon copy of the last. Wake up late, procrastinate, blame the world, fall asleep angry and afraid. Every complaint, every empty rant to people who barely listened only dragged him deeper. The world didn't stop to save him. People didn't rush in to lift him up. And it was in that silent abandonment that he discovered something most people never learn. No one's coming to save you. No one feels your pain the way you do. And honestly, no one's supposed to. Life is hard, but it's fair in its toughness. Grayson stood at that crossroads. There were no more excuses to hide behind. No more hands reaching out to catch him. It was just him, his ruins, and the hardest decision he would ever face. Get up or sink forever. But pain is inevitable. But suffering is optional. His journey of overcoming, of faith over fear, of spiritual growth was only just beginning. But there, on the cold floor of his own failure, he decided that version of himself was going to die. And a new version would be born, not forged in comfort, but in pain. After months at rock bottom, Grayson Lee was still clinging to an idea that felt comfortable, but was deadly. He believed the world owed him something. He thought that because he had suffered, someone would eventually come to rescue him. That sooner or later, people would recognize his pain and reach out a helping hand. That all he had to do was wait patiently or complain loudly enough, and life would magically turn around. He stayed trapped in that lie. Every time he told someone about his struggles, hoping for some empathy, all he got in return was distance. Every unanswered cry for help added more bitterness to his heart. Every time someone brushed off his venting, his faith in himself shrank a little more. The brutal truth that Grayson refused to accept was simple. The world doesn't run on pity. It runs on strength. As long as he kept seeing himself as a victim, he would never be treated like a winner. But that's not how life works. It doesn't matter how many times you cry. It doesn't matter how many times you complain. If you don't change, nothing changes. Grayson started to realize there wasn't going to be some rescue plan. There wouldn't be a magical moment where everything just made sense. Life was demanding a price from him, and the only accepted currency was silent action. It was brutal, but it was real. Life wasn't going to bend to him. He would have to stand up by himself, swapping complaints for action, swapping excuses for discipline, swapping whining for strategy. For the first time, Grayson felt something different. It wasn't cheap optimism. It was the start of something far rarer: personal responsibility, authentic faith, real transformation. The road ahead would still be brutal, but right then and there, he dropped the lie that had been chaining him down. And he started walking the road that very few ever dare to take, the road of true transformation. The night everything changed wasn't some dramatic event. It started just like all the others. Grayson Lee woke up with that same emptiness in his chest, the same weight on his shoulders, but something was different that night. The silence felt louder. The walls of his small room felt like they were pressing in on his soul. And for the first time in months, he saw himself for what he really was. Not as a victim, not as someone the world had wronged, but as a co-conspirator in his own downfall. I am the problem. The thought sliced through his mind like a cold blade. And for the first time, he understood. It wasn't enough to just survive. He had to change. From the inside out, Grayson sat on the edge of his bed, no lights, no audience, and decided that the old version of himself would not live to see the sunrise. From that moment on, everything would be different. No big announcements, no motivational posts on social media, no trying to prove anything to anyone. Real change doesn't make noise. If God had planted something great inside him, then it was time to prove he was worthy of it. That faith, silent, mature, brutally honest, became Grayson's new fuel. For the first time in a long time, he didn't pray for relief. He prayed for strength. He didn't ask for easier paths. He asked for the courage to walk the hard ones. True spiritual strength wasn't born on a day of victory. It was born on that cold, lonely night when no one was watching. When Grayson Lee realized life wasn't about what happens to you, it's about what you choose to do about it. That decision didn't erase his problems. It didn't refill his bank account. It didn't bring back old friends. But it brought him something far more powerful. Solid faith, a renewed purpose, an unshakable certainty that he would never be the same person again. That was the turning point. The first day of the new Grayson Lee, and no one else knew it. Only he did, and that was all that mattered. Grayson Lee quickly realized that true change would take way more than just a moment of inspiration. It would require building a brutal routine, invisible to the world, but strong enough to rebuild him from the inside out. He started waking up before the sun, not because he had appointments to keep, but because he needed to win the battle against himself before the day even started. Every morning was a silent fight between the old Grayson and the new one. In those first few days, the urge to quit was overwhelming. His body protested, his mind sabotaged him. But this time, he tuned out the voices. There was no room for self-pity. Every tiny act of discipline was a declaration of war against the old version of himself. Grayson swapped mindless scrolling on social media for books that fed his soul. He traded shallow conversations for deep reflections. He started training his body not to show off to others, but to toughen his mind. Every workout, every page read, every hard choice was an invisible victory. Victories no one clapped for. Victories no one even noticed. But he knew. The real victories are won in silence. When no one believes in you. It was through this grueling process that Grayson discovered the true meaning of faith over fear. He didn't know when or even if his life would turn around. But he kept planting seeds without seeing results. He kept taking action with zero guarantees. That's faith. Not waiting for the perfect setup to move, but moving to build the setup you want. Day after day, Grayson's inner construction shaped a new reality. His spirit grew stronger. His mind grew sharper. His body began to respond. And slowly, the world around him started reacting too. Small opportunities appeared. New people, real people crossed his path. Doors didn't magically open. He kicked them down with the strength he built in silence. Grayson Lee became someone the world could no longer ignore. But the real prize wasn't out there. The real prize was the man he had become when no one was looking. To the outside world, nothing seemed to change overnight. There were no parties, no headlines, no sudden fame. But inside Grayson Lee, everything was already different. He had won the hardest battle of all, the war against himself. He no longer needed the world's applause because finally he could quietly applaud himself. Opportunities started popping up. Small ones at first. A project accepted. A valuable contact made. Someone who believed in him. Not because of what he said, but because of what he carried within. Without even realizing it, Grayson had become the person he always wanted to be. Someone strong enough to handle pain. Someone disciplined enough to keep pushing even without immediate results. Someone whose faith was solid. A faith built in nights of doubt, days of loneliness, and silent battles no one ever saw. Faith over fear. It wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was the inevitable result of someone who plants strength in the silence. And finally, that invisible victory started spilling into his outer world. A new job, a new mindset, new dreams. The transformation that had started in the dark was now lighting up everything he touched. Not because he needed to prove anything to anyone, but because this time he knew exactly who he was. And no one could take that away from him. That was the real victory. Not the bank account, not the applause, but the unshakable truth carved deep into his soul. He had won when no one was watching. Grayson Lee became living proof that God's strength, faith in the darkest moments, and the ability to act without recognition are the true pillars of overcoming life's hardest challenges. If you're down today, if you feel like no one sees your efforts, if you feel misunderstood by the world, know this: your greatest victory will be invisible, and it will be built brick by brick in the dark, without applause, without an audience. But one day when you least expect it, it will be so strong that the whole world will have no choice but to see it.